Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Haynes,
And I'm Trenton Bennett.
and we are audiobook narrators and also educators. And we are doing this series of videos generally, just voicing what's on our minds that we think would be helpful to people who are new to narration, or even people who are well seasoned in narration but are looking for some fresh ideas and maybe even fresh questions. This is a special series within the series about AI and our industry. During the first part, Trenton, who has done his homework on this, was talking about what humans have that AI is never going to have, especially when it comes to how we interpret emotional content and how that plays out in our bodies and how we respond to text with emotion. Next, we're going to go even deeper into where AI, no matter how much it improves, still can get out of control. And again, this is not saying that we need to protest or picket line AI because AI is gonna find a way. But this is to say, okay, this is what AI's Achilles heels tend to be. Does that sound like a fair way to put it, Trenton?
It is because we don't have all the answers. We're not the programmers of the AI, but there are some philosophical hurdles that AI developers have faced in their construction, continue to face, and they are challenges that may not be resolved.
So tell us more, because these are some. I was certainly surprised and really about some of the stuff that you brought up. So share, please.
Let me give you a basic example before we dig in, which is if you think about it, you probably have at least one time in your life where something has been inherently wrong and the hard time fixing it came from the fact that the person that you were interacting with said, well, that's what it says in the computer. That's what the computer says. So I
Hmm.
can't do anything. It's because computers are flawed and limited. It's hard to believe when we have so much wonder in our pockets in our cell phones, but computers are generally a flawed and limited system. AI is only as good as the information that it has been given and how well it is trained to process what it is given. And that's where things start to get sticky because
Mm.
the basic premise is that the responses it gives are driven by the underlying assertion given to it by its creators that it is expected to be the voice of authority.
Mm.
People approach AI uh, like you would approach the oracle at Delphi, looking for the secret to your future. They ask it something and they wait for an answer. And that is a transactional nature within technology, within software. Yes, it's going to process your response to that answer, but it still considers it, you ask me a thing, I give you a thing.
Hmm.
Oh, that's not right. You want me to adjust it? Okay, well, let me go find information and give you another thing. Is that it? And it's a little bit of a repeated shot in the dark. It's okay, is this it? No. Okay, well, is this it?
Hmm.
No. When it makes a mistake, it cannot self-diagnose well enough to be able to adapt because it's thinking transactionally. You gave me
Mm.
an input, I pulled everything I could, then I gave you an output, and I expected you to accept that.
Yes, yes, okay.
So here's the other thing about it, and I promise not to digress too much
Hmm.
because I do love technology and I can go on, but here's the thing. The larger the data set, the wider the variety of options. When you
Hmm.
have more data, there's more possible paths. The way to understand this is imagine if you did a Google search and before you could make a decision on your Google search, you had to read every single result in that Google search before choosing one.
Right.
It's difficult. It's a huge amount of information, and it's not that computers have so much processing capacity and the cloud is so many computers joined together. It still requires a lot of processing that, as we mentioned in the first video, involves a lot of nuance and context that can't be drawn out when you're trying to transactionally aggregate information and assemble it into an output.
Hmm. Hmm. how has this played out by examples? Because again, some examples that you gave me, I was just like, no kidding. People could actually get AI, even though AI is supposed to be, the ultimate voice. People were actually able to puppet AI in this way. Can you share some of those?
Yeah, I've got two. The first is that even a wrong answer can be perceived to be the right answer if the AI is not trained to know the difference between infallible data and
Mm,
subjective information.
mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm,
it may be going to a news website and go, this is a news website, and not realize that it's reading a letter to the editor or an opinion piece that
mm-hmm.
isn't actual fact. And a good
Right.
example is we've actually been talking about this for a while about the idea that intelligent voices could soon be reading the news for us and we wouldn't know the difference. Well, we would, because even when they try to do it, there are times when it would say, there was a cute thing today about puppies in the news, and the local animal shelter is urging you to adopt. A whole bunch of people just died in a bus crash. And it doesn't
Mm,
know to switch gears and
yeah.
change tones. Now, that will eventually be fixed. But my point here is that a wrong answer can still be perceived to be the right answer if the AI cannot distinguish between infallible data
Mm-hmm.
and subjective information.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Brings me to my second example.
Mm-hmm.
There is one video where there were some folks that were trolling an AI on purpose. Like a small child that struggles to understand sarcasm, AI has a hard time determining misinformation. And the example I mention is they were bothering the AI trying to assert that 2 plus 2 equals 5. And it kept saying 2 plus 2 equals 4. No, it equals 5. And continuing to badger it, finally the AI agreed with him and said, okay, 2 plus 2 equals 5.
Mm.
And that's difficult because is it doing that because it understands that it's not, I shouldn't say understands, there's not an intelligence here, there's a logical processing order that was put together by somebody.
Right.
But
Right.
is the response being put that way because the most logical path to exit where it's able to stop doing transactions with this person that is contradicting it is to simply agree with the person and wait for them to go away? I mean,
Mm.
we do kind of do that. Or is it actually assimilating that and going, hey, I see a lot of people saying 2 plus 2 equals 4, but I now have a significant percentage of people saying 2 plus 2 equals
Mm.
5 that I need to give that credibility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If enough people on the internet are confidently wrong, AI could falsely read that confidence as correctness. Here's a very important point to remember. I mentioned earlier that computers are not perfect, neither are humans. We can fix some of the problems that I've elaborated on. We'll never really perfect it because humans haven't perfected these things themselves. We are flawed humans, and thus by nature, we cannot build a perfect system. One of our flaws is that we assume a computer's intelligence to be capable of perfection. But here's where we, as voice artists, as audiobook narrators, come in. There's far more boring content out there on the internet than engaging content.
Mm.
There's so much text. There's a wall of text out there. There's all this information presented in different ways, from sloppy to silly. That's why, as narrators, we need to be able to make bold choices. We need to be the characters not only as the author has established them, but as they grow through their journey to end up
Mm.
as something else.
Mm-hmm.
If the voice, tone, and understanding of a character in chapter one hasn't gone anywhere or changed at all by the end, then nothing was gained. And I have a really good example of this.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen the TV show Sherlock that was BBC with Benedict Cumberbatch?
Even though people have told me I look like Benedict Cumberbatch, I have not seen the show. But so for anybody who's like me, let's hear Trenton out.
There's a really neat dramatic scene where Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty are standing talking to each other, and it's very tense.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew Scott, the actor, says that the reason he landed the job is because in this scene, Sherlock Holmes tells Moriarty, how can you not be moved by this? People have died. You've killed people. People have died. And he immediately screams, that's what they do. And the intensity and the ferocity of that. He said, I did that in the audition. And everybody listening was like, oh, oh, wow, that's new. That's something
Mm,
really engaging. That's really startling and interesting to me. He made a bold, creative choice
mm-hmm,
that completely changed it and took everything in a new direction. And they loved him for it. And that's why he got the part.
mm, mm-hmm. You know
That's where
what
it's on us.
you know what this also reminds me of, because you and I are both rock and roll nerds. Roger Daltrey, that climactic moment of can't won't get fooled again, where he just releases that cathartic scream, right?
Yeah.
Originally, that was just supposed to be a very cool, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Roger Daltrey, when he was listening to it, is like, no, this calls for way more than that. And so he was alone in the booth. The rest of the band was taking a break, and he just screamed, and the rest of the band was just like, "What is going on in there?" And Daltrey was like, "That was the right thing to do for that moment," and goodness knows it sure was.
It contains all the intense anger of the youth of the 1960s.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It was a war cry.
Wonderful. I mean, yeah, yeah. Wonderful what we can do. And anything else that people should know before we give a little taste of what's coming up?
Know that, as we've said before, we won't stop AI. It's not something that'll go away. We can't make it disappear. We need to understand our place in the world where technology has moved forward, and we are moving along with it, just as we had when we first started having home studios and recording with our own equipment.
Right. Hmm.
This is
Great.
just another step in the journey, and we need to know how to step in time with progress and figure out the best way to be part of the future.
Okay. Well, looking forward to this. In the meantime, folks, stay tuned. I'm Matt Haynes,
And I'm Trenton Bennett.
and as your narrators and helpers with the process of narration, I hope that our voices and your ears meet again real soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.